languages, linguistics, literature, okay, we so that period of time was characterized by the dominance of theories, Greek theories, or en français they say, yes, grande theory. Okay, so the dominance of theory and that is an employee, or if you want to join the job market, you should master the theory or the theories that you have taken in your courses. But are you hearing me? Yeah. Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Professor. We are following.
Yeah, no problem. Okay,
Yeah.
so and the first half of the 20th century, it was theory. Theory was the dominant component of education, to the extent that some courses in the curriculum were defined by theory X and theory Z. So it was articulated and organized in terms of the big theories existing in that field, which is still the case in, generally speaking, in some departments nationwide, okay? But the changes, once again, that happened, and the complexities, the complex and complicated changes that happened since the end of the Second World War, okay, required to reconsider that situation and the need for practical skills and competencies, and the need for practice to understand, okay, to understand the complexities, the characteristics, the nature of the emerging societies and emerging realities in education and in elsewhere after the Second World War. And of course, just to give you another term for the change, for a better understanding. So there was a change from theory, from practice to practice. You need a theory. You should have a theory in your hand, theory to guide your practice. But later on, now, it is no longer the case. Theory in practice, that is, theory should come from practice. For example, in our case, teachers should develop their theory from practice, and they should learn from themselves. Sorry. Another change is from single discipline to multidisciplinary to integrated knowledge. Okay, so education was organized in the form of disciplines. Okay, once again, the 1960s, 1970s, because the forces or the driving forces for the changes that happened are almost the same. They are the deep changes that happened after the Second World War in different walks of life. I said to multidisciplinary, and then today integrated knowledge. Okay, that is, that kind of departmentalization and that distinction and between theory and practice is no longer plausible and effective. Integrated knowledge, that is, the bridging of the gap between theory and practice. Okay, so theory drives practice and evolves out of practice. Another area of change, which is closely related to the others, is the change from knowledge as truth to knowledge as relative. and as information. I think Iman has mentioned the concept knowledge as information. Yes, Iman? Iman?
Yes, sir, she has mentioned it.
Knowledge as information and knowledge as discourse.
Yes.
Okay, so that period of time characterized by the theoretical assertion or assertions, absolute truth is no longer practical. It is no longer helpful. So knowledge, okay, knowledge has become merely information. It is a discourse. It is a narrative. Better understanding for this, you can go back to Foucault, who considers knowledge as discourse. Okay, so the truth, there is no absolute truth in knowledge. Okay, why? Because knowledge is ever changing. It is not stagnant. There is no theory which can last for, some theories may be reconsidered in 24 hours, in 1 hour. Okay, so, and more importantly, is that access to knowledge itself is less important, okay, is less important. Access to knowledge is not a serious issue today. What is more serious is how to process knowledge, not how to access. Access, yes, it's very important, okay? But how to process knowledge, how to manage knowledge, how to reflect on that knowledge, how to develop critical perspectives in your when processing that knowledge, to become yourself a producer of knowledge, to become creative and innovative. And this is the concept which is at the core of lifelong learning. That is to open the path for everybody to be his own, to be creative, to process knowledge, to reflect on knowledge, existing theories, if he or she, or if they want to be innovative, and to really help integrate in knowledge society and the economy, and that will come in the part of my presentation. Okay, another change, another aspect of change, yes, you are familiar with. It is the change from rote learning to learning as reflection. And I think you can and you should associate rote learning. And by the way, here we do not use good and bad, okay? We are simply trying to explain concepts and putting them in their theoretical and conceptual framework. Okay, rote learning, okay, rote learning fits within a behaviorist view of education, in our case, language education. As you know, for behaviorism, in our case, language acquisition and language development, language acquisition, L1 acquisition and L2 learning is a process of, yes, imitation.
Please, Professor.
Repetition. Yeah?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah?
Could you please repeat the last change?
The last
that you
change
have just mentioned, that you have just mentioned right now.
Okay. So the last change is that from rote learning, is it okay? Rote learning to learning as a reflection. In other words, okay, it is a change from behaviorism to constructivism to the interactionist perspective on learning and teaching. In our case, language teaching and learning. Rote learning, okay, rote learning is one of the practical implications for the learning strategies that students were thought should stick themselves to. And they have to, simply because the knowledge they receive from their teachers was considered as true. And of course, true things, okay, should be learned by heart, should be saved and stored to memorize in the future. We do not reflect on things we think are absolute truths. Okay, so these changes are closely related. So from rote learning to learning as reflection, which means that knowledge, that the teacher is no longer the only source of knowledge. Access to knowledge is no longer important itself. What is important is how to process, how to treat, how to reorganize, how to be a critical student, to reflect, okay, on the knowledge you have access to, and to become yourself producer of this knowledge. Reflection is, and of course, critical thinking and critical thinking skills, because we cannot conduct reflection on something without critical thinking skills. It is a prerequisite to engage in reflective thinking and reflecting on knowledge and the source of knowledge and other issues related to knowledge, processing and management. Okay, so these are some implications. The first, rote learning. It is one of the implications of the behaviorist perspective on education. Second, and foreign language education that are most relevant to us. Although I said that the two terms good and bad should not be used. Rote learning might be or may be good for some learners. And I have to say from the very beginning, the ultimate purpose, in our case, in language teaching and learning, is to make this process effective. And what determines the effectiveness of the process of teaching and learning, and the quality of learning, and the quality of students' achievement, performance and achievement, is the extent to which what is done exactly, either in policy or in pedagogy and practice, meets the needs of, or the, yes please, the needs of the existing and emerging needs of different students. No practice and no approach is effective in itself. Okay, so we have to respond to the diversity that may exist among students, and we should engage students not only to meet their response, to engage them in deciding about their needs in situations, okay, to discover their needs and to be engaged in the implementation, okay, and this the implementation of those practices. Yes, Iman, you mentioned that yes, the curriculum. Yes, I've taken down the term curriculum. Here I have the change from classical curriculum, Iman, to program. Okay, from classic curriculum, which is fixed, okay, by some pedagogical authorities, okay, and which may last for, it depends, 5 years, 10 years, it depends on the time of reform, on the reforms, and when reforms happen, okay? So it is fixed. It doesn't constitute some characteristics which allow self-evaluation, continuous evaluation, and continuous change. So one major change is the program. The terms are very important, please. The curriculum and the program. Now, we talk about the modular degree program, the bachelor modular degree program, the BA modular degree program. A number of modules can be put on the program. And by the way, professors and teachers can change some modules every year if they want, for example. Okay, so it helps to change. It helps. It allows continuous evaluation. Okay, and maybe the new reform, to my knowledge, that has been launched will include some mechanisms which would allow stakeholders, professors, and maybe other stakeholders to introduce change, okay, whenever it seems appropriate. So the mechanisms, it's different. For example, in our case, we have some generations of, I think, Agrompa, some generations, okay, so they form a Agrompa community or a community, okay, so 10 years, etc. So it's no longer the case. So we have the program. Yes, sir? Yeah, any question?
Yes, I still remember the day we had the entrance exam, oral exam. Professor Slawi has asked me, would you prefer to study critical thinking as a separated module, or do you like it to be enhanced in the modules that you are going to study in the program?
Yeah, it is, yes, you are right. It is the modular degree program. The master, so sometimes we write the master program, okay, because you know, we know what we mean and we know that people will understand. It is the master modular degree program, okay, and these master programs can change modules. I can dare say every year. They may delete a module and put another one if it is more appropriate, or if the members of that master program think that the inclusion of another one instead of the other would be more useful, more helpful for the students, or more timely. So this is possible. Of course, there are some procedures that have to be respected, but what is important, it is no longer stagnant. It is no longer a decade or 2 decades curricula. So here in the field of pedagogy and education, we have to care for the some terms, because they help to disseminate some ambiguities and confusions. Okay, these seem to be used interchangeable. Yes, why not? But they don't mean exactly the same thing. The curriculum is not the program. Another, and I think this is the last, not the last idea of the of the presentation, although I think it is now, yeah, or we still have time. okay, is from face-to-face to distance to e-learning. Don't think, please, of these changes that is in a chronological term, because we are here from face-to-face to distance to e-learning, okay? Distance learning and e-learning are important changes, controversial changes, okay? You know that in the past, education was face-to-face. Face-to-face doesn't mean it was traditional. Some online practices and e-learning practices are governed by the same perspectives on education, traditional perspectives on education, as those that happen in face-to-face. We have face-to-face teaching, behaviorism, and we use some new technologies to practice the insights of behaviorism. We face-to-face teach and we e-teach. It can be e-teaching, okay? And it can be e-teaching, and it can be e-learning and distant learning. So these are controversial issues. And of course, next Tuesday, we have Professor Woudghiri Amin, and I will be there. I will talk about these educational issues in e-learning pedagogies. We will talk about these issues, okay? Distance learning, yes, we have another seminar on distance learning. We have another third seminar on blended learning and flipped classrooms, because these are timely issues. What is important, and here I would like you to prepare yourself to maximize your benefit, not only from me, from each other, and from our guests. What is important about an area or an aspect of e-learning and distance learning is the learning environment, the learning space. With wider use of e-learning and distance learning, the issue of the learning space has become important. And we are, and you are, in a better position to address these issues, to help, to inform decision makers, why not, policy makers, practitioners, to help ourselves to better understand these issues with the ultimate purpose of joining the efforts being done in the implementation of change. So we have to be enlightened, and our conceptions and views and perspectives should be research-based, practical research, of course, in this case, fieldwork research. Okay, so just to recapitulate, to summarize this first part of this lecture. So for the elements that are placed on the left hand, that is those childhood that I started with, should not be considered as merely traditional. They are not important. They still exist. In many cases, they are complementary, and they still work, okay, to avoid confusion for you, that this is childhood, it has been it, this is face-to-face, it's no longer appropriate? No, they are complementary. All the changes that happened or that have happened are merely improvements on those that were in practice and that existed before. Because we don't have gaps, we have changes and we have continuities. Okay. Any question because before I move to, yeah? Is Professor Slawi still with us? Professor? Yes, Professor Slawi?
Yes.
Iman? Iman?
Yes, sir. Yes, she's still here.
Yes, please. I would like Professor Slawi to take the floor. Okay, to take the floor for 1 minute. Okay, take a break. Yes, Professor Slawi?
Yeah. I found all the overview you gave about the historical development of this lifelong learning very interesting, because it puts the students in the picture. I mean, how this issue of lifelong learning has developed, has changed, and also this concept of education, how it is understood in the past, how it is now changing and still keeping on changing within all those globalization and digitalization of education. I would like just to ask you about this concept of diversity, which you mentioned, and which stands at the heart of this lifelong learning. It is taken as one of the key concepts of lifelong learning. Could you please, Professor, elaborate more on this concept as an expert in the domain? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor, for your question. Diversity is a very important and defining key defining term of lifelong learning, which can be considered as an approach to education and educational practice. Diversity refers to the differences that exist between students, among students, and between teachers and students with respect to their frames of reference, that is, to the differences that exist between them with respect to their needs, the most important of which are first learning needs, that is what happens online or face-to-face, learning needs, and with respect to their socio-cultural backgrounds, with respect to their concerns, fears, ambitions, etc. Also with respect to their future needs that might be professional, personal, social. So learners are not the same.
Yeah.
Learners are, or students are not copies of each other, which means that either online or in the classroom, that is, pedagogical practices should be diversified to meet those ever-changing needs, future and present needs of our students. Okay, so we need to diversify. We need to be animator. We need to do our best through action research, maybe through reflection on what goes on in our classrooms or online, for a better understanding of the forces that are at work in the classroom, if it is the classroom or online. And by the way, for the classroom, it is not always it doesn't limit chances, this kind of chances and opportunities. It depends once again how we consider the classroom. Recent research on the classroom, the environment, is very enlightening and rich and informing. The classroom is no longer that black books that no one can penetrate, that is characterized by rigid patterns of classroom communication and rigid distribution of power and roles within the classroom. The classroom can be, if we consider the diversity, if we can appreciate that diversity, not something which is imposed on us and that it is part of our job, but we have to appreciate, to like it, to invest that diversity and to turn that diversity as a factor that promotes learning, and that diversity as an opportunity that we have to use to implement the new pedagogies, that is problem-based, task-based, group work, project-based learning, multimedia projects, etc., to put it and to implement it in practice, to experiment it, and to help students to learn from each other, to learn from themselves, and to learn from that context. So diversity, and this is one of the principles of very important, at least to me, because I like it. I experienced that and it works. I benefited from a training on open space technology or open space, but in non-formal education and training. There are some people. Diversity is not a problem to be solved, but it is a resource to be invested. It should be a driving force, not a constraining force. To this end, teachers should be facilitators, animators, and should create that space which helps to make students themselves assume responsibility and play the role of facilitators, animators themselves within the group, and to integrate them in the creation of that environment in such a way whereby they can become icebreakers in case there are or there is ice teachers think should be broken. Okay, I will talk about diversity later on, because diversity is good, but it has some far-reaching complexities and challenges.
Yes, sir.
Challenges which are pedagogical and also institutional. If you believe that the people are different, so one should have some leadership competencies, communication, social communication competencies to facilitate, to bring those people together, to provide a positive and supporting space where they will, they can work, and how to set the floor for excellent work to happen, how to motivate them. So it has this pedagogical conviction has some far-reaching challenges and, of course, implications that we may talk about by the end of this lecture concerning teachers' training, concerning the environment, etc. Yes?
Yes, sir. That's why when diversity is not taken into account, I mean the diversity of students' needs, diversity becomes a barrier to learning. As Longworth mentioned, or called as the learning design barriers that I mentioned earlier, right?
Diversity
Yes.
might be a constraining factor.
Yes, diversity, if it's not taken into account, it becomes the barrier, the diversity of
Yes,
students.
of course.
Yes.
No one, yeah, Iman, no one can do something one doesn't know. No one, this is why I usually, yes, you remember all the group, pedagogical training, yes, it's good. Training teachers, okay, it's excellent, okay? Whenever there is change, to successfully implement change, because while you're talking about teachers, I'm not blaming them. On the contrary, they are change agents that should be supported, because no change can be implemented. I'm talking change, I'm talking about reform and reforms and emerging ideas in the field of teaching and learning and in the field of education and the implementing of new technologies, etc. The problem is that because teaching and learning is a culture, this is an organized, the way we are organizing and thinking today, for example, is different. So it is a new culture, it is new to us all, okay? The problem happens when pedagogical convictions are contrary to what there is a general agreement about as innovative, as helpful as, okay? That is, only motivated people can help doing a job, doing or can be highly performant. If people are not motivated, don't expect excellence and great jobs. Motivation is very important. And people are motivated, students and teachers, and, differently. Okay?
Professor.
Yes?
Really sorry to interrupt you.
I asked you
okay.
at the beginning to interrupt me.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so when we talk about education, or let me say higher education to be more particular, we are talking of two, I think, two major principles: the skills and knowledge of the student in a particular professional field of study, such as, for instance, social linguistics, applied linguistics, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, second, we have the skills and the knowledge of the student based on his or her social competencies. So to what extent can we speak of the second principle, or to what extent can we say that the second principle can be put under the umbrella of lifelong learning? And thank you very much.
Yeah, social competencies, yes, they have, because they learn from themselves, from their own experiences, okay? Either informal or non-formal, or informal, okay? Formal is not 100% formal, okay? When
yes.
you are at the company, it is not 100% formal. Just at the door of a room, it's like you are talking to your friend, you are asking him or her, discussing something, okay? Diversity, once again, one is from Agadir and one is from Tangier and another one, and you are learning anyway. You are learning, you are speaking English, exchanging ideas, okay? So it is not 100%.
Yes.
So what is this, okay? This, for pedagogical purposes, it should be, we should shift to another area, which is that of soft skills, okay? Which is soft skills, which is an important area of debate, because I will talk about higher education lifelong learning exactly in higher education. And I will give examples from Sidi Mohammed Abdullah University, things that have been done and the constraints and what is next, okay? I will talk about soft skills and this kind of social skills when talking about lifelong learning as a strategy, mission, and value of institutions of higher education in some example countries and in our country exactly, okay? There, why? Because to bridge the gap between higher education and institutions of higher education and the socio-economic sector and the future, the existing and future needs of the socio-economic sector, the ever-changing generations of students, to bridge those gaps and to help the country achieve the goals of sustainable development and integration in the knowledge society and economy. There is a general agreement on the need to integrate soft skills. To integrate the soft skills, what does it mean? It means, once again, to bridge the gap between formal, non-formal, and informal education. Fortunately, this is possible at this moment of change. It is possible because there is more and more access to education, and we can turn this crisis resulting from COVID-19 into a positive. There has never been, or in other words, so the amount of communication that took place during the last 2 months between stakeholders in education is, that amount is unprecedented. Between teachers and students, and teachers' parents, and parents' students themselves. Some parents, yes, they live within the same, the first, okay, say they are at home, but they have never communicated the fears and concerns of their daughters and sons, educational programs, their difficulties, as it happened the last two months, okay? And this is exactly the kind of communication that is a prerequisite to implement change. Communication between the major stakeholders, teachers, parents, students, and to be open on other stakeholders, policymakers, of course, and the socio-economic stakeholders, and the civil society is also very important in the process, in both urban and rural areas. Okay, so I hope, yes, of course, you have driven me to talk about about this gap and how to bridge this gap, but I will turn to later on. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes, dear coordinator, Iman. Yes? Where is she?
Yes, sir. Here I am.
You know, because I have basic knowledge in this, I can't see, do many things at the same time. I know that you have more expertise than me. Yeah? Now, if there are any questions or I move.
I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah?
Can you please repeat what you just said? I didn't hear you.
I'm not, the voice is not clear, man? Yeah?
I can hear you now perfectly.
Okay, we go ahead?
Yes.
Okay. So Now I will move from the changes, okay, from the changes, because I want you to understand all those changes that happened, with the hope that we are prepared for the to be prepared for the next for the seminars to come. And I will try to go quickly over some slides. Just I would like to refer back to John Dewey. Okay, John Dewey. I have a quote. I would like to to cite John Dewey in 1916 says, "Education should not cess when one leaves school." Okay, this is a quote from the book he published in 1960. He says the purpose of school organization. He talks about the aim of education, which should not cess, and education institutions. The purpose of school organization is to ensure the continuance of education, continuity of education, by organizing the powers that ensure growth. The ultimate purpose is growth of the child, of students. John Dewey says that education means the enterprise of supplying the conditions which ensure the growth, that is the creation of conditions, environments which ensure growth, or adequacy of life, the quality of life, irrespective of age. These are the words of John Dewey. From this, John Dewey also says that education is to learn, is a process of learning, to learn in the process of learning, of teaching, and in the process of education, and to learn from life. In this quote, and this quote summarizes the underlying idea that can fit as a title of John Dewey's book. Okay, that the understanding of Dewey's understanding of the role of school, the role of education, is almost. There is a difference in the articulation. Okay, but the content, the soul, is that of lifelong learning that emerged in 1995, okay? Or the first drafts of lifelong learning that appeared in 1995. For example, in addition to learning to be, learning to, there is a fifth element, Iman, which is learning to care for the planet. Yes, learning to care for the planet. This is another ingredient that was added to the definition of what lifelong learning is, that I will talk. Okay, so this is an introduction. Okay, so the idea of lifelong learning, the philosophy of lifelong learning education existed since the very beginning of the 20th century. The second sign of lifelong learning education, now learning, is the reports that I referred to so far, 99 reports. Then the Yaxley 1999 book on lifelong, entitled Lifelong Education, and many other evolutions that I referred to before, until the Taylor's report, 1996, in which it was claimed that learning has 4 pillars. Yes, Iman? I'm repeating.
Yes, to know, to be, and to live, to be. 4 pillars.
Yes, Iman, learning to know.
Yes, to know.
Second, learning to do.
To be, and to live together.
To do, learning to live together, and learning to be.
Yes.
Okay, so the order of this, the order is, okay, is significant, okay? And learning to be, because it takes time for one to learn to be, okay? Because yes, knowledge you can access, process anyway. To do, yes, you can move to action. To live together, of course, we are obliged to live together in a way or another. So the quality of living together, but learning to be is very difficult, because it takes time, because it is related to values, to culture, to one's values, personal values and culture. And for values to be instilled in one's mind and heart, it takes time. Okay, it takes time. And of course, the fifth one is learning to care for the planet. Okay, so there are 4 major terms that sometimes that precede the emergence of lifelong learning, which are still used to talk about issues of professional education in many universities. As, for example, continuing professional development, développement professionnel continu, okay? Continuing professional development. Another term is continuing education. You know what is it, okay? They are all concerned with adult education. Another concept that you will surely come across whenever reading on lifelong learning or doing a research on lifelong learning, recurrent education. Another less offensive phrase is human resource development. Okay, so I said continuing professional development, continuing education, recurrent education, human resource development. And now I will move to lifelong learning definition and scope. Yes, are you following?
Yes, we are following.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Now, lifelong learning definition and scope. The definition of lifelong learning. Lifelong learning refers to, and as I have, or I always insist on, definitions are not too long. Definitions are always short, and good definitions are always concise. That is, a limited number of words are used to draw the boundaries, the conceptual, theoretical, methodological, and pedagogical scope of an area, an academic area. So we should care for every word. all learning. All learning. Okay, we have all and we have learning. We don't have education here. We don't have continuing education. Adult education. We have all learning. Okay, activity. Here the focus is on activity, practice, undertaken. We don't have the subject here, undertaken, because it's difficult to insert in one definition all the stakeholders who undertake. Okay, undertaken throughout life. Yeah, yes, yes. Any question?
No, sir.
All learning activity undertaken throughout life. Throughout life, it is lifelong. That is from the cradle to learning doesn't stop after one completes his or her studies. It doesn't stop by retirement.
Stops when he is dead.
It stops when one loses
His
consciousness. That is when one dies. Throughout life, with the aim. What's the aim? With the aim, first, improving knowledge, not receiving knowledge. I said every word is significant here. Not only to receive knowledge, to consume knowledge and be passive recipients of that knowledge. Yes, to access knowledge, to process knowledge, to reflect on that knowledge, to seek knowledge, and to improve knowledge, to create knowledge. Knowledge, skills, sometimes may use competencies, and of course, you know that skills are subdivisions of the same competence. Skills and competence. So here we have knowledge, skills, we have integrated, an integration of both knowledge and practice. Here we have a balance between knowledge and practice, between theory and practice. Here we have a third way, which brings that extreme, that is knowledge, that is education for life, only for life, and the other counter example, which is education for the job market. So the third is an integration, improving knowledge and skills, competencies with a personal, civic, social, and or employment-related perspective. So we have employability is important, is an important aim. Within a personal, to be, care, civic, live together, and to care for the planet. And of course, knowledge, yes, it's explicitly expressed here. And for the skills and competence, they refer to the first ingredients, the four defining elements, which are to do. This definition is very important for drawing flexible boundaries, not rigid boundaries, but flexible boundaries for the scope of lifelong learning. So, lifelong learning is, therefore, excuse me, Is it okay? Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who's about to
Yes,
run
Professor.
off? Yeah, okay. So from this definition, we can infer or we can draw the scope. Yeah, so first, lifelong learning, we draw on this definition, okay? Abide with this, this definition is, okay, was articulated by the European Commission, acquiring and updating all kinds of abilities. This definition refers to acquiring and updating and adapting all kinds of abilities, capacities, capacities, competencies, interests, because it is personal, knowledge, qualifications from the preschool years to post-retirement. That is, it doesn't stop. The second boundary or defining element of lifelong learning is that it promotes the development of knowledge and competencies, that will enable each citizen. And here we have the notion of citizenship. To adapt, as you mentioned, Iman, to adapt to the knowledge-based society and economy. Yes, to adapt to the knowledge-based society and economy, and actively participate in all spheres for citizens to participate in all spheres of social and economic life. Here is a balance once again between social life, economic life, citizenship, okay? Not only market-oriented, job-oriented, or just for life, but there is a balance between the personal, economic, social needs of individuals and communities, societies, etc. Okay, to enable citizens to adapt to the knowledge society and actively participate in all spheres of social and economic life, taking more control of his/her future. That is, citizens should be given chances to different paths to be their own and to assume responsibility, of course, for their future. The third element, we are explaining the three most important ingredients put in this definition. Lifelong learning, according to this definition, or the way it is defined here, values all forms of learning, including formal, non-formal, and informal learning. And here, once again, there is a balance between formal, non-formal, and informal, because some of the most important constraints our used to study and that constituted issues in the process of teaching and learning and in research is the gap between formal education and non-formal education and informal education. Very wide and deep gap. Today, it is no longer the case, thanks to unprecedented access to education. Families in Morocco and elsewhere have come to give unprecedented interest in their children's schooling and education. Okay, this narrows the gap. Anyway, this formal learning, non-formal learning, and formal learning help to capture different priorities and the priorities of different stakeholders in education. Different priorities and different stakeholders in the field of education and the socio-economic sector. Formal learning is simply described or defined as structured. There are structured periods of learning. Structured period of learning with evaluative assessment. They end with evaluation, regardless of final exams, the quizzes, whatever. But they are structured and they end with evaluation, evaluative assessment. That enables students to earn credit towards recognized awards and qualifications and certificates. Examples of structured or formal learning include the modular courses taught and assessed by universities, which can be counted towards undergraduate or postgraduate degrees and diplomas. Informal learning, because this is why I said different priorities and priorities of different stakeholders. When talking about youth, for example, and of course they are citizens. And one defining element of lifelong learning is social justice and inclusion. Yes, they have been added, these ingredients, later on, okay? This definition itself has been criticized. There is always new, okay? We talk about youth in general. We don't talk about graduates, okay? So this is why non-formal learning for both graduates and those who have no diplomas, those who are already working, okay, those who left their work for one reason or another, it depends. It is also structured. Non-formal is structured. Periods of learning that may include, not necessarily, may include formative assessment, not summative assessment or evaluative assessment. Formative. And this is the kind of evaluation that is used in trainings, non-formal trainings. You get a certificate, and it is not on the basis of an exam, but a formative assessment. But which do not lead to the award credit. You don't have credits, okay? You have a certificate that you participated in a training that was conducted on X and Z issues, etc. Examples include professional development courses which build professional competence. Some people may, group of professionals may have training on leadership, international finance, and you can think of other 3 days, maybe 1 week, and they get a certificate. Either they pay or it is free. What is important is that it is structured. There is a program which covers a period of time, 1 day, 2, 3, 1 week, it depends, but it ends with a formative evaluation and formative pedagogy. This is another story that we will talk about later. Informal learning. Loosely structured. It is not structured. Okay? It is not structured, or in best cases, it is loosely structured. Okay? Of learning that which rarely include assessment. There is no assessment. Okay? And which do not lead to the award reading. No assessment and no structure and no award readings. Examples include open educational resources. Okay? Include open educational resources developed and made available online by universities to anyone who wishes to study them. If any one of you is interested in sociology, maybe he wants to understand, it is appealing to him. Okay, since you are students of applied linguistics, you might be interested in to understand the sociology of education. You may have access to a course on that that a university, a foreign university or ours, is offering online. So this is non-formal. A word of caution, the third ingredient, the way it is defined, okay, when talking about higher education is a bit different from other levels of education. In formal education, we have been offered informal education during the COVID-19 crisis and the sudden emergence of this of e-learning. We have been learning from our children, our friends. Okay, this is informal. Okay, we learn from each other, from friends, from colleagues, in contexts which are not structured, in times which are not apparent before. So it is a bit flexible. Lifelong learning, okay, here, lifelong learning, education, lifelong learning policies. Or the primary mission of lifelong learning, higher education institutions. First, it is or it should be employability and labor market-oriented in objectives. If it is lifelong learning, it should be employability and market-oriented in objectives. Here the elements, the most important elements of a program: the objectives, the content, the methodology, and the fourth, evaluation. It should be, and here I don't mean that it should be 100%. It is a matter of focus. That's why it should be employability oriented. That is more focus on employability and the needs of the job market in objectives. It should be competence based in content. That is, the content of the courses should be engineered and designed in a way which responds to the needs of the socio-economic sector. And we should not, when we hear the word the socio-economic, we forget about the socio. We remember the economy. The social societal and economic sector, okay? The social and economic sector, okay? So here we have economy, the job market, and we have society as well. So it should competency based in content. And of course, this response to the needs, the existing and emerging needs of both students and the job market should result from and be informed by some studies. In this case, to build up this strategy, there should be a kind of needs analysis, and there should be there should be the institutionalization of these needs analysis. There should exist some bodies, some centers, some observatories in institutions of higher education which continuously conduct this kind of analysis, because the needs are not stagnant, they are ever changing. And the graduates, okay, that is students, are ever changing, new generations. So the objective employability, the focus on employability, the content should be based on the competence approach. And here there is no way to insert our own points of view, okay? But this is exactly how leading countries, okay, including our country, okay, are reacting to the gap between education and between education and the socio-economic system. Lifelong learning should be, or is, and should be, learner-centered in the learner, the student should be the center of the process of lifelong learning. Lifelong learning should be formative in evaluation. The existing evaluation system in our country and in many others is completely contrary to the philosophy, the goals, the objectives of lifelong learning. It is summative. Maybe it will certainly change in the near future. A third element which has come to shape the four is that it is not only face-to-face, it is also distant, it is e-learning, which results in new challenges at the level of the content itself, particularly at the levels of pedagogy, because the emerging technologies, e-learning, distant learning, blended, okay, they are pedagogies. And learning is conducted in some spaces, online spaces, and spaces which we are not familiar with. We have to be aware of this in order to successfully integrate in implementing change. In terms of pedagogy and delivery, and this is the language of the market, to deliver. And at the level of marketing, how to market the courses, how to sell courses, how to earn money from online courses. Just to share with you an example. Why not teaching, for example, Arabic or Islamic studies or things that many courses that we are excellent? Why not selling them to people from other countries without coming to Morocco, for example? The need, teaching Arabic. How many people come to Morocco and they go to other countries to learn Arabic, to learn the Amazigh language, to learn Moroccan Arabic, and different varieties of the Arabic? They come to Morocco to learn sciences related to Islam. They want to. Why not sending them courses? Why not investing online learning in these things? Okay, instead of courses. Okay, so it is online.
Sorry, dear Professor. Maybe because there is no contact zone for culture. Maybe e-learning.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the present. Yeah, I'm what we are doing. As some of my colleagues said 2 days ago, we are experiencing a self-training. We are managing, and of course, part of what we are doing within this experience, there are very important successful practices. Okay, I'm not talking about now that is during this crisis period and we will teach people courses in Arabic or the Amazigh language. No, I'm talking of lifelong learning, because lifelong learning, we should not associate associate e-learning and distance learning with COVID-19. No, these are emerging technologies and pedagogies grounded in learning theories. The ultimate purpose is to improve the quality of education and learning and the quality of students' performance and achievement and their success along their learning track, to avoid school, to drop out from university, and to help integrate in the job markets and to achieve success in their personal and personal future life, and to make the difference in the lives of children and youth. Okay? It was not created because people knew before that one day Corona will come and they will find themselves for life. No. It has come as a result of the revolutions and evolutions in the field of education sciences, in the field of pedagogy, and in the field of ICT, etc. Okay? And of course, it is now widely used, and it works. It has been working to solve at least to manage, and it will define our educational practices, policies, practices in the future. Okay, so the mission and objectives of lifelong learning, or of lifelong learning in higher education, or lifelong learning in higher education and education institutions. First, the mission and the objectives. First, to conduct, that is, lifelong learning institutions should conduct continuing needs analysis of the existing and emerging needs of the socio-economic sector to help enhance the quality of the formal and non-formal educational and education and training programs offered. Because the analysis of the needs, to classify those needs, will help the competencies of the university, or will help university to offer non-formal trainings okay, for other stakeholders. A good example that I have in mind now is that there is a partnership between Sidi Mohammed Abdullah University and the Council of the Region Fes Meknes. And by the way, it is a partnership between the Council of the Regional Council Fes Meknes and Sidi Mohammed Abdullah University, Moulay Ismail University, Al Akhawain University, and Oromed University. Okay, this is a partnership. These universities are offering trainings, short trainings, for all representatives in different local communes in the region. Okay, and these trainings have been conducted, to my knowledge, for 8 or 10, I think 10 months, and it has been working. It has been working, and it worked well. Okay, so training programs offered. This is just one example. There are other examples that I can refer you to. The second object, in addition to this conduct of needs analysis, to know, because we talk about openness of universities on their what are the needs? And there should be a partnership. It should be institutionalized. Okay? The second, and maybe this is the umbrella objective and mission, is to bridge the gap between higher education and training and the socio-economic sector. The third is to offer students trainings or training which is tailored and adjusted according to the needs of the job market. Why? To increase their employability chances. The fourth is to provide training programs tailored to the needs of employees, not students. Employees who are in the who are working employees. Why? Who would like to develop their competencies, to upgrade, okay, to update their competencies and qualifications to enhance their professional development and productivity. Another objective is to provide training programs, once again, tailored to those who would need to start their first job or to set their own projects. They are not students, maybe they are graduates. They are not a training which helps them to set up, to start their own projects. How to help them to make those ideas they have real projects, and how to implement them in reality. Another objective is to offer trainings for civic activists, because we have been talking about the job-oriented trainings. Now the activists, because we have to be open on socio-economic sector, and of course many associations have already started offering this kind, and they are competitive now. They may there is a competition between universities and many associations in providing trainings, particularly in the socio-cultural domains. Who would need to start? Yes, I said civic activists to enhance their competencies in the fields they need to become active, well-informed and responsible and effective citizens. Because many civic activists may or may not, okay, they may need some trainings on effective, responsible, well-informed citizenship. Another objective is to translate stakeholders' needs into competence-based lifelong learning course offers. That is a catalog. I will talk about the catalog of courses. And understand how universities and companies can benefit from cooperation and aligning their lifelong learning offers to labor market needs. So lifelong learning should come from the needs identified. I will recapitulate the needs in the labor market. There is another problem that universities have to solve, which is that of certification. And of course, to successfully implement this kind of openness on the job markets, we should engineer different courses and different levels of courses. We should conduct that analysis to guarantee that to compete on the training market. We should ensure that the training we are offering does not exist. Okay, that is to be our offer should be distinguished and distinguishing. And we should respond, and I'm talking about here about institutions of higher education, to specific professional issues. For the methodology or the staff, they should be experts, and they should work in workshops and many other issues. For the content, I said it should be competence-based. And of course, the competency-based approach was introduced in the field of education in reaction and to respond to the changes that happened in the field of industry and business. And of course, we differentiate within competency-based between general competencies and specific competencies. And I would like to use two terms which are in now: hard skills and soft skills. Specific competencies that are related to one's major, to one specialization, and general, they are referred to as soft skills, as life skills, as transversal skills, okay? The skills that students, employees from different fields of leadership to cope with change. And there are other communication, and communication skills is not, you cannot limit communication skills to languages. No, all professions need communication skills. Okay, so it is not a hard skill. Languages, okay, foreign languages, students from different departments need to speak at least 2 or 3, or it depends, foreign languages. In this case, it is a soft skills. In our case, in the Department of English, English is not a soft skills. Yes, it is, because it is our major, okay? It is our specialization. Because we're not only learning English, learning literature, we are learning linguistics and different courses, etc. Okay? But for the Department of Arabic Studies or French Studies or Islamic Studies or Geography or History, etc., it is soft skills. So we talk about L soft skills. Yes. So lifelong learning holds that universities or institutions of education and higher education in particular should have the competence catalog, a catalog of courses that work well for them, to market this catalog and to sell it. Following, please. Yes.
Yes, we still follow.
Yes, we are still following.
I'm trying to. Okay, remember that a competence has 3 states in time. A competence which can be divided into skills. Before teaching or training or learning, or okay, so that set of name starts, it is an objective. First, they have a competence as an objective. During training, it is a learning activity, should be an activity. After the training, it should become a learning outcome. The same competence is considered as an objective, then learning activity, and it should be measured as a learning outcome. Okay, for some prerequisites and characteristics of lifelong learning pedagogy. Lifelong learning is face-to-face, blended learning. It is e-learning, distance learning, and it focuses on the combination of use of all these pedagogical tools and marketing tools. Lifelong learning is practical in methodology. So it is problem-based learning. It is project-based learning. It is task-based learning. And it is learning by the way. Lifelong learning is also experiential and situated learning. Lifelong learning requires the accessibility of the course and the materials. It also requires the accessibility of the teacher. It is also necessary to integrate or to ensure the quality of the teaching materials, that is the content, and the quality of the virtual classroom. Lifelong learning requires the ability to and the readiness to be rapid and adjusted to communication and to react to the questions of students, and it requires that the program should be delivered at the beginning of the course. That is, before the beginning of the course, the program should be delivered, the teaching material should be delivered to students to guarantee their participation and interaction. The last point, lifelong learning pedagogy is based on the following principles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First, lifelong learning pedagogy holds that management, leadership, and responsibility are activities. They are not merely rhetoric. They are activities that can and should be shared and distributed among students and teachers, as well as between students themselves. The second principle is that of diversity. Diversity among individual members of a group, of a community, with respect to their sociocultural and functional backgrounds, should be considered a resource to be used, to be invested, rather than a problem to be overcome. Another principle is that of the nature of communication. In lifelong learning, communication is an integrated and complex two-way process, which is achieved through collaborative and cooperative negotiation of meaning and shared understanding between participants in communication. It holds that is this perspective on communication, it holds that open communication and collaboration between students can bring about improved conditions for all. And it suggests and implies that the form and the geometry of communication should be reconsidered. Activities and patterns of communication, either virtually or in the classroom, traditional classroom, face-to-face classroom, should be reconsidered, and there should be more group work, because the group is the layout. The group contributes to changing the physical arrangement of the learning environment, and it should also help creating another emotional and social environment, not only physical arrangement. Because in rows, the traditional way of arranging people, it is clear from the very beginning who is expected to talk, to take the floor for long hours, and who is expected to listen. So they, from the very beginning, reflect that rigid distribution of roles between teachers and students. Lifelong learning, of course, it is learner-centered. So lifelong learning is, pedagogically speaking, it is the act of recognizing the student as full human being in all aspects of teaching and learning. It is student-centered and student-engaging. it should, the process, the student should be engaged, involved in the process of teaching and learning. And both teachers and learners should consider themselves as lifelong learners, rather than merely partners in the implementation of, partners in the implementation of behaviorist use and pedagogy, the hidden agreements between them to implement it. They should have that sense of engagement and interaction, give and take. They should run the risk or risk taking to commit mistakes, etc. Okay, it is participative and interactive. Lifelong learning is by definition interactive and participative in approach and methodology. Not only in approach, in rhetoric, but also in practice. Lifelong learning works on both what you learn and, more importantly, on how you learn. So lifelong learning is about how learners learn. How can we best contribute to help learners to learn, instead of injecting him or her with knowledge we think is absolute and we think it is the truth itself. Another important, and I think it is the last one at least today, because we will come back to many issues that we have covered and raised. Lifelong learning should be conducted in a non-authoritarian environment. It should be conducted in an open space, in a safe space, stress-free space, enabling space. Open, it doesn't mean that we have to, without walls. Huh? No, it is open in terms socially and emotionally. Okay, that is, there should be some emotional, the social, the affectional dimension in that focus, either face-to-face or online. It should be a supportive learning environment, conducive to learning and performance and achievement and success. Because according to scholars in the field, to to change the behavior of individuals, to motivate them to integrate in interaction, to be participative, interactive, engaging, etc. People, children, students, employees, whatever. To change the behavior of individuals, it may be necessary to change the standards of the group, the environment of the group, its style of management and leadership, and its emotional atmosphere. You don't need to give people lectures about motivation, about engagement, interaction. No, you simply create the appropriate supportive, supportive environment, and they will interact, they will engage, they will find a place somewhere to fit, because it is, if we are able to create that stress-free environment, that environment of friendship, mutual trust, that collegial trust. And I will go back to trust in 3 or 4 sentences. Trust and collegial environment. But I would like to end with lifelong learning have some far-reaching implications and challenges for assessment. For assessment, and we will have 2 seminars, or at least one seminar on assessment in general and online assessment. And of course, we will have, or we have invited for that one of our distinguished scholars, applied linguists in Morocco now, Professor Abdelmajid Boussian, and our colleague Karima Belriti, and I will be with them to talk about assessment. Just I would like to let you know that the issue of trust, mutual trust, was one of the appealing issues and widely discussed issue in the last conference that took place in Marrakesh in January from the 6th to the 11th on school effectiveness. The issue of trust was an issue, an appealing issue, an aching issue, and I observed, because it was an international conference, very big, unprecedented, the first of its kind in Africa, on school effectiveness. And this what drew my attention. I was surprised that this just trust and the environment, the educational environment. The second is that a key defining concept, defining the nature of space that we can create online, is that of colleagues. It is referred to as collegial environment. That is, teachers and students are not merely partners. Yes, it's good, it is prestigious. Yes, they are partners. It reveals and reflects important changes in the philosophy of education, but they are colleagues because they can work together and they can maintain contact at private times and in private places. So they are colleagues. Okay, they are colleagues. So trust and trust-based and trust-based and collegial environments are very important, both face-to-face and online. Okay, I promised to talk about our university. I would like to let you know that Sid Mohammed Al University has introduced important changes, and this lifelong learning, l'éducation toute langue la vie, constitutes an important part of the project that Professor Douane Mrabat presented or introduced to develop Sid Mohammed Al University. And of course, as a result of that project and the general agreement of different stakeholders at the university on that project, a lifelong learning center was created, I think, one year ago, and it is operating successfully. And there it exists. Yes, it exists nearby CHU. Okay, it is a very, very nice, spacious space. Okay, and it hosts the trainings that the university offers for councils of representatives in the region of Fez and Pines. And we started offering a course before COVID, this crisis, a course in English for all teachers at the university, professors from other departments, of course, and we teach them English. That is, the university has this offer for teachers. Okay, so some organizational changes, because we're talking about the creation of a lifelong learning center at the Sidi University, or the creation of an online center. So these are not only pedagogical changes, okay? There are also organizational changes, okay? Organizational, institutional changes, okay? But their creation, their existence would later on, hopefully, influence the mainstream education. And once again, as I promised, there are at the university a great amount of successful practices in lifelong learning that need to be brought together, coordinated, institutionalized. And this is one of the reasons why the center, Lifelong Learning Center, it is Lifelong Learning and Certification Center. Centre d'éducation, de formation et certification. Okay? So very important changes are going on. We hope that things get better in the future, and of course we are optimistic. We are on the right track. Okay, see, this is part of the story of lifelong learning. Thank you very much for your interest and for your listening. Now the floor is used for questions, comments, addition. Okay, so the floor is yours, Professor Slawi, and my teacher.
Yes, we give floor to the students to have questions or clarification before I have the floor to say something. Yeah.
I'm listening to you if I'm not on the screen, just to have a cup of water. Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I'm listening to you. Don't worry.
Yes, dear Professor, thank you very much for giving us the floor.
Yeah.
Okay, here I would like to elaborate on two important things, and I think you have talked a lot about those things, but I would like to elaborate on two important and significant issues. The first one is, I think, how can we encourage lifelong learning? And in this view, I think that the university, as any other educational institutions, should, as I have mentioned before, should develop a variety of didactic, of course, approaches to foster and to reinforce lifelong learning, and thus to create a suitable and effective atmosphere that encourages this process. And second, I think, how can we deal with lifelong learning of adults, of how can I put it, of adults with intellectual disabilities? And this is one of the problems that, of course, educational institutions should largely take into account. So those are the two, I think, major issues that I think that all the educational institutions, not only the universities should largely take into consideration.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, in relation to what Mr. Kuri said, I think that in our institution we are probably lacking a bit of workable implementation strategies. I mean, we are still working on that. It is not all the time a matter of funding, but it is also a matter of strategies. Those strategies can lead to implementation, and also the resistance of change of the stakeholders. Some stakeholders are resisting this culture of change. So we are facing the issue while implementing this lifelong learning culture or idea. Okay, and I also liked, Mr. Bakuri, your idea about people with disabilities. I mean, we need to have what we call inclusive education, and we should be encouraged to take care of those marginalized segments of society and marginalized students. Okay, yeah. So these are important issues which you raise, and I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Yes, very pertinent points. Yes. More questions, comments, additions? Yes, dear students. Have you slept?
Also, it's so awake. Thank you.
Don't go to sleep. We'll have dinner together, inshallah, in 1 hour.
Online dinner.
Online dinner, yeah. Yes? Okay, I will try to, yeah? I will try to react to, yes? Any question, yes? Is anyone who would like to contribute, yes? Okay. Let me react to, let me start, yes? I hear the voice, yes? Please. Someone wants to contribute? Something is going wrong with the sound. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, now we are hearing.
I don't know. I touched the. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes. No questions. Okay. So I completely and totally agree with Professor Slawi. For she has so far raised the word that I find most relevant, and to express some of the constraints, difficulties, challenges surrounding thinking about lifelong learning and its implementation, which is that of culture. okay? Because some difficulties that hinder advance and improvement in lifelong learning strategies and practices is not that, and resistance is not that X is good and Z is bad. Because we have a mindset which is shaped by an organizational culture, because this is something which is not, we are not familiar with. And people, yes, they resist something they don't know. They don't know. And of course, the nature of change. When change happens, such as the case we have been in this crisis, lifelong learning, people think that there are losers and winners, which is not the case. Okay, there is competition between institutions of higher education, between institutions within the same university, and some sort of competition between maybe between the staff, etc. Something else that Professor Slow mentioned, that we haven't yet articulated clear strategic plans. Okay, strategic plans. And it's important that we have at least, we have already started, thanks to this crisis, talking about lifelong learning, and everybody is, we have been speaking, using the same language, talking about, of course, different varieties of the same language. The language is e-learning, blended, okay, e-learning, distant learning, and within this language, different varieties. Different varieties, that is, different perspectives. But we have started debating, and now everyone can say e-learning and distant learning, l'éducation à distance, okay? So this language, a set of words, now are guests for in all homes, okay? Even people who do not speak French, they have started using and pronouncing accurately l'éducation à distance, okay? They are now familiar with the problems and the difficulties encountering this. So this is a good start. This should constitute, okay? This should constitute a starting point to improve, okay? To improve good practices, to help overcome the weaknesses for special education. Personally, all I can say in this respect, because that leaders of our university, that is the deans and directors, I can guarantee this, I know them, would welcome any initiative, regardless of its source. The source may be one student. If he or she has an idea, okay, just how to help to articulate what can be done, they will be positive. From the civil society, so new preoccupations, concerns emerge sadly, and special or education for special needs people should be one of these priorities. Should be one of these priorities. That's all I can, yes, special education, yes. Universities should develop strategic plans, okay? Strategic plans. And I think how to develop and to push lifelong learning further in our country, either we do it or others will do it. Competition, and it is positive now, competition between Moroccan universities and between the universities in the region of Fez and Knes, for example, and between institutions within the same university, that is Mandal University, is something positive. And it will help a lot to push further the efforts being done. Push further good practices that have been done. Okay, so of course there are so many recommendations that I don't want to go into details because money, the funds are not always the problem. I know what I am saying are not always the problem. The problem is is in how to motivate people. The problem is how to put the right people in the right places. So I will have to stick or to maintain one of my own convictions. It has nothing to do, either you can disagree with me, okay? I have explained so far that there is no absolute. I personally think that, this is my position, that one of the serious problems in the Moroccan educational system is that of leadership and lack of training on leadership and communication. Now, the faculty of law and economic studies and economic and social studies is #1 at the University of concerning online and e-learning during the, which institution you think is the second? It is Sharia. It is Sharia. Sharia is the second. What is the secret? It is communication. The secret is communication. So we have to conduct research instead of, for example, in your case next year, inshallah, instead of conducting research on every research is relevant. We hope that research will be oriented to understand why things have been done good here, effective, and why not here, to contribute to improvement. Sharia is the second. Why? Allahu A'lam. Okay? I think that the secret is communication, both institutions. That is, communication and motivating people is very important. That's all I can say. And of course, communication and motivation are very important in lifelong learning, to push people to work, to motivate them to do their best. When people are motivated, they do the best they can. Okay.
And I think by doing such study or let me say such a comparative study, and knowing the reasons why could be or will be absolutely the solution for the problem.
We have to conduct case studies. Okay? Case studies. Let me give you an example. I've mentioned so far in this lecture that there is an approach, open space technology. Sometimes it is referred to as open space methodology, that was experimented in non-formal context, and it gave good results. Very simple research was conducted. Some experts observed that whenever they organize a great event, conference, well-scheduled program, everything, okay, the richest discussion and interaction happens. Discussion happens at coffee break moments. Very rich ideas are lost at breakup. And he studied, he said, why? Why? What are the rules governing the rules and the environment, the rules governing interaction and the environment, and discovered 4 rules. Okay, so please remember me when talking about learn. I will be with you, okay? Whatever you think it fits to talk about, yes, learner-centeredness or autonomous learning or helping learners to learn. Remember me of the four rules, okay? Motivation and the rule of the bees, okay? The 2 feeds. If you are no longer, one of the rules says that when you feel that you are no longer giving or learning, you are not taking and giving, so you stop. If one is not learning and is not taking at particular environment, okay, this is why online learning is very important, because it allows more space and opportunities for students to do things, the time, okay, at different times, different places, different ways, etc. Okay, so we'll come back to these stories. We have learners' autonomy and autonomous learning and learning strategies, and okay, I think you have seen the program. It's rich. Okay, but prepare yourselves, please. So all the issues we have been discussing this evening will be in a way or another, because this is I wanted this session to be the ground for the next. Okay?
Yes.
And I would like to give floor to Professor Slawi. Personally, I'm very happy to see you again and to share with you these questions and the stories of lifelong learning. Thank you for your listening. Do your best to. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Professor Slawi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Khafa, for this comprehensive lecture on lifelong learning and all interrelated issues, which, as you said, will set the ground for the coming sessions of this series of webinar masterclasses you are going to give. So I think that the students will benefit a lot from these lectures. Thank you very much for all your efforts.
Yes, Professor and Slawi and my teacher. Please, just to remind you, of course, you don't need to be invited next Tuesday. You have the program?
Yes, of course.
We have,
yes.
Yeah,
I have it.
Yes, we will be together, inshallah, Tuesday, but not at 7 because the
Sorry, there is a problem of
just
sound.
for
I can't hear.
I think 4:30
Yes.
p.m. 4:30
Yes.
p.m.
Yes.
not 7.
Inshallah.
Okay,
Inshallah.
inshallah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Thank you all. Congratulations, Iman, for your very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much, dear Professor.
Have a good night. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.